Well, as social media continues to soar in its development, we're excited to have Digital Media's Frontiers Marketing Director Chris Laney with us. He's not new to radio. He served with the Radio Training Network as their digital strategist. If you've been around, you know he's in charge of the digital forum of Bob Thornton on the PD forum. He has worked with new media and marketing for top organizations like Chick-fil-A and Verizon Wireless. So we're excited to have you this morning. And by the way, if you have questions, Lori is the one you want to direct them to. Her email is Lori, Lori, at cmbonline.org. Chris Laney.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Michelle. I'm really excited to be here. I will have to say that some of you saw my post last night and this morning. I was going to talk about MySpace and how we can engage users on MySpace, but management thought that that was going to be not as beneficial to you. So I had to quickly figure out a couple other social media sites to talk about. A couple of things before we get started. If you have questions, I know you're supposed to send them to Lori for the Q&A, but if you also have questions throughout the day or comments or you just want to heckle me, I'm using hashtag CMBSocial on Twitter. That's hashtag CMBSocial on Twitter. If you don't know what a hashtag is, I'm sure glad you're here. And then also, Lori will make the presentation that I'm doing today, not just the audio, but also I put together a PowerPoint that will be available for download sometime in the coming hours or days. Today we're really lucky because there were some new stats that just came out regarding social media, actually came out today. So I'm really excited to actually start off the teleconference by sharing some of those stats with you so you can kind of see the overall picture of where social media is at. Starting with Twitter, in February of 2010, 50 million tweets a day is the amount of tweets that were going out. As of March of 2012, it's over 340 million tweets a day, or over 1 billion in 3 days. So you can see the growth level there of Twitter. Facebook hit 500 million users July of 2010. As of March 31st, there was 901 million. YouTube had 2 billion views a month as of May of 2010. As of May of 2012, they are at 4 billion views, so they've doubled. Fortune 100 companies, which is what the study was kind of designed around, Twitter is the #1 social media site for mentions and engagement among Fortune 100 companies. Over 82% of them are engaging through Twitter. The average follows on Twitter for corporate accounts in 2010 was 1,489. It is now 14,709. And Facebook, the average likes on a corporate page was 2010, which was 40,884. As of today, it's 152,646. 79% of corporate accounts engage through Twitter by retweets and mentions, which we'll talk about here in a little while. And the average conversations on Facebook is 6,101. And over 70% of the corporate accounts respond to those conversations. The average accounts that each corporation has is 10 on Facebook and Twitter. They use different accounts for engagement, whether it's general news, employment, customer service, or certain products that they're trying to push. And because they've utilized a social media strategy, they've been able to embrace new technologies like Google Plus and Pinterest, which 48% of them have a Google Plus presence and 25% have a Pinterest presence because Pinterest is still invitation only, so it's a little harder to get on there until you get invited. So where are we at? We'll go ahead and get the presentation started. Most of us are on Facebook, and we're asking ourselves, are we doing it right, and how can we monitor our efforts? We are on Twitter, but very few of us have a clear strategy of how to utilize it. Is Google Plus a ghost town? You're scared of Pinterest because of copyright issues, and where else should it be, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Flickr, or any of the other social media sites? Social media has 2 metrics. The 2 metrics that we care about, and these are the only 2 metrics that matter in social media, is influence and engagement. Some of you are already familiar with these 2 metrics. Influence is the metric that most people have cared about for so long. It's the total amount of likes you have on your Facebook and the total amount of follows that you have through Pinterest or Twitter. And most of us have determined social media strength through our influence. We have, 100,000 likes, so therefore we must be doing well. However, I believe engagement, which is the second metric, is more important. It doesn't matter if you have 100,000 likes, but if you can engage them to care about the content that you're pushing out, then it really doesn't matter. So we'll start with Facebook. About 6 months ago, we introduced at Digital Frontiers Media a new statistic called the Facebook conversion rate. Some of you have seen me talk about it. If I've consulted for your station, you definitely know I talk about it. The Facebook conversion rate was an easy way for us to determine engagement on Facebook. Whether you have an admin password to your Facebook or not, you can actually easily do that right now. So if you are in front of your computer, you can go to your station's Facebook page. If you don't know how to get to it, you can either go to your website, there's probably a link, or invite the intern that's out in the office to come in and help you out. And there's going to be a spot on your Facebook page that has your total likes. Click on that, and you're going to see two numbers. You can say people talking about us and total likes. You're going to take the people talking about us and divide it by your total likes, and that's going to be your Facebook conversion rate, or FCR. Now, in the presentation that you guys will have available to download, I use an example from a real radio station, a large market radio station. They had 604 people talking about them, and they had 38,450 likes. That converted into a 1.6% Facebook conversion rate. Now, increasing your Facebook conversion rate is important. This is a couple of ways that we can go ahead and learn how to increase that. Now, 1.6% for this particular radio station is very bad. You usually want to be between 10 and 20%. I've seen them in certain contests as much as 400%, but on an average basis, you want to be between 10 and 20%. When I first started studying the utilization of Facebook conversion rate, I actually went out and went to 15 to 20 different radio station Facebook pages, and only 2 stations were over 10%. And a lot of these stations that are very large stations, you kind of expected them to have maybe a higher conversion rate because they have people in place to monitor social media. But surprisingly enough, they were actually very low. So what you want to do to increase is monitor what posts work. Posting with pictures, posting with video, what kind of content that's local or national content is engaging your audience. And we'll talk about how you can actually view how each post is working in just a couple seconds. Communicate and respond. It still amazes me that we will post a status update on Facebook. We'll get 20 likes and 10 comments, but as a station, we don't engage with any of those comments or likes. We kind of just leave it out there, and we move on to the next thing that we're going to ask a question about. So if somebody says they answer your question, either like that post or write something. Thanks for sharing. We appreciate the information. You can easily turn that 20 likes and 10 comments into 40 likes and 20 comments just by continuing to communicate and respond. The Facebook analytics, and this is what I was talking about, that will allow you to determine what posts are working. A lot of radio stations that I've consulted for still don't know that Facebook analytics is available, or they don't know where to find it. It's a free tool. It's a great free tool for you to be able to determine what's working on Facebook. You can see your total likes. You can see people talking about you, and they'll actually give you charts. You can actually download the reports. If you're in charge of social media and you want to provide those reports to higher management, you can go ahead and do that. As you scroll below the Facebook analytics, which, by the way, is available if you are an admin of the Facebook page, you'll see each post that's posted, whether you posted a video or a question, all those posts are in the analytics, and it tells you the engagement on each post. So this is very important for you to determine what's working and what's not. What's interesting is the stations that I've consulted for and looked over what's working and what's not, the one thing that works the least amount of time is actually content that's related to the artist that we play on the radio, which a lot of us, it comes to a surprise, but when we post a music video or something about an artist, a lot of our audience is not engaged into that as much as they're engaged into the local content, what's going on in their community. So just keep that in mind. Now, if it is a situation where a couple months ago when Chris August got hurt, a lot more people were engaged in that because that was a serious condition, or Matt from St. Israel when he was dealing with the family issues with his son. Those kind of things deal with the heart, and those have higher engagement. But just posting music videos isn't necessarily going to rise the engagement. Also, what we have found is when you ask a question with just a question and on a status, that has a least amount of engagement than if you were to post that question with an image. So just keep that in mind when you're asking questions on Facebook. Maybe you can connect an image to it of some sort, and that could actually help that Facebook conversion rate. So moving on to Twitter, I like to look at Twitter as a break room, and what I mean by that is when you are in the break room, maybe you're on an hour lunch break, a lot is going on. You have an hour to engage in a lot of different topics and conversations with your fellow employees. Twitter is very similar. Because the feed is moving so quickly, you possibly cannot engage in every conversation. So try to engage in all the topics that are interesting to you and that are related to you. Retweet them, mention, just be engaged with the audience that are asking you questions. And because it's only 140 characters, try to be as intelligent as possible. I always make the joke that the reason that I'm not a blogger is because I'm not smart enough to write a paragraph, but I am smart enough to write 140 characters. And plus, with the amount of grammar issues that I have, I can usually fix them a little easier in 140 characters. So some Twitter do's. I'm going to do some do's and don'ts. So for some do's, retweet more, ask questions, mix up the topics. So if you're interested in just an example, let's say that you're giving away ice cream at the end of the week. Throughout the week, plan some topics related to ice cream, like when certain toppings came out, I'm not sure how to say that, or when certain flavors came out. You want to try to ask questions about, engage in that particular topic that goes along with your promotions that's going on that week. And when you are engaging with those kind of things, then it's easier to enter information about it then, or you can put in Bible verses or anything like that. Be funny. I know this is hard for a station Twitter account, but you make jokes. Try to engage through being funny. Some of the biggest retweets that you see on Twitter is going to be the ones that are most humorous. The largest retweet I actually received over the last 4 years I've been on Twitter, I wrote a tweet that said, "I feel more Christian when I go to Chick-fil-A." And I received almost 200 retweets from that one tweet because people thought it was funny. Exit without announcing your exit. What I mean by that is with Twitter, you don't need to tell the world that you're leaving. I know a lot of people like to say good night Twitter, or they say things that they're going to work, and that's fine. But when you're in a conversation with 3 or 4 people, even on your station Twitter page, you don't need to announce your exit. Just leave. Unless somebody has proposed a question directly to you, you don't need to continue to engage. Just go ahead and leave. Have a plan and for promotions and conversations. That goes back to the idea if you're giving away ice cream, plan out that week and the posts that you're going to be making, the promotions that go along with that, the conversations that you want to have, and plan those out 3 to 6 months in advance. This shouldn't be any different than a program director planning out certain events on air or certain segments that you're going to be doing each day. Do the same thing with social media. Don't just wing it all the time, especially with the station Twitter page. And last, utilize hashtags. And that's what I was talking about. You're welcome to do hashtags today, hashtag CMB social, so I can follow the entire conversation if anybody is tweeting about this particular presentation. And TV has really embraced hashtags. Radio has not quite got there yet, but television, when you're watching an episode or, So You Think You Can Dance, in the bottom corner will have hashtags, So You Think You Can Dance, so they can monitor, who's engaging with them on Twitter. Now, ABC Family has taken it further where they do situational hashtags. So if you're watching an episode like Pretty Little Liars, not saying I watch Pretty Little Liars, but let's say you're watching Pretty Little Liars, then they'll have a hashtag in the bottom that will pop up saying so-and-so broke up with so-and-so. This is really interesting because it allows them to see what situations people are engaging in, and it allows them when they're working on TV shows for the future, what topics are actually working and what topics are interesting to their audience. So situational hashtags are really important. But for the time being, I think that just utilizing hashtags for shows like the morning show or the afternoon show, see if people get involved in that. The worst that could happen is no one gets involved, and you would never know if it worked or not. Some Twitter don't be afraid to unfollow someone if they're posting things you don't agree with. I know I've talked to a lot of stations where they really want to keep their Twitter count up, and they're afraid if they unfollow people will unfollow them. Well, that's okay. If they're posting content that you don't agree with, just let them unfollow you. Don't post tons of links to your website. A lot of times it's easy for us to say, new event coming up, here's a link to our website. Check out my blog, here's a link to the website. Don't continue to do that because people can see through that. Have a conversation with your audience on Twitter, and don't feel like you're always having to broadcast a message or push them to your website. I think it's important to do that every once in a while, but it's not something you should be doing 90, 95% of the time. I would save the links to your website down to 20 to 25% of the time. Don't respond to a conversation that's over 24 hours old. This goes to the same for us DJs and for personalities that are on Twitter with a personal account. If you're talking about a certain topic, a lot of people are involved. Unless somebody asks you a question, if it has went static, if the conversation went static for 24 hours, don't feel like you need to engage into the conversation. That conversation is over. Twitter has moved on. This is the most important don't. I can't stress enough with Twitter. Do not have your Twitter and your Facebook connected. What I mean by that, if you are tweeting and you tweet something and it automatically goes to your Facebook, or you do an update on Facebook and it automatically goes to your Twitter, stop that, because the audience is different. Yes, people that have Twitter have Facebook, but the demographic is different. You need to create promotions that are for Facebook and that are for Twitter. It's okay that if content is related to both and you think it's important for both, then yes, go ahead and update your Twitter and Facebook with the same post. But not every post should be the same. So just think about that. I know a lot of radio stations, because they don't have somebody that's managing their social media, it's easy for them to connect their Twitter because they don't really have a clear strategy for what they're going to do with Twitter. So they just figure everything they put on Facebook, they'll go to Twitter. I don't recommend that. You might get some Twitter followers, but you'll get no engagement for the most part. And last, don't broadcast messages, which we've already talked about. Just you don't need to continue to push people to the content that you're trying to put out. Try to engage with them by asking questions, retweeting, mentions, things like that. Just a few weeks ago, we introduced the Twitter conversion rate. Just like the Facebook conversion rate, it's a way for us to determine, a way for us to see the engagement on Twitter. Unfortunately, unlike Facebook, you will need some sort of monitoring software for you to see the Twitter conversion rate. I would recommend something like Hootsuite or Sprout Social, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the way that we determine a Twitter conversion rate, which in the example I did in my presentation, I used my own personal Twitter account. We take the mentions plus the messages received, the private messages received, and the retweet, and we divide that by the messages sent, and that's going to be your Twitter conversion rate. So in my example, I had 59 mentions. I had 65 messages received, private messages received, and 6 retweets, which I'm still trying to get my confidence back up about my retweets being so low. And I sent 196 messages. That came to a 66.3% Twitter conversion rate. Unlike Facebook, Twitter is going to be much, much higher. That really should be around 80 to 100%. My retweets are really low, so that's something I need to work on just from that. So we can talk a little bit more about the Twitter conversion rate if you have questions about it. Moving on to Google+. And the following social media sites are going to be pretty short because Facebook and Twitter are the most important. But people always ask, is Google+ relevant? And the quick answer to that is no, it's not as a social media site. You don't need to be focusing on engagement on Google+. One, because the demographic on Google+ is over 70% male, and most of them are engineers. So your demographic's not really there. However, Google has put such an emphasis on Google+ and how to make the web a more social environment. So if you have a blog or your personalities have a blog, you should have a station Google+ account, and you should be pushing the blog information out to your Google+. You won't get the engagement you want, but it's going to help with your search engine optimization or SEO because Google is going to be looking through the Google+ before they're looking at Facebook and Twitter. So it's important if you're trying to build your search engine optimization, please use Google+. And Google Hangouts, which is the video recording software, is becoming one of the most popular tools out there in the social world. A lot of people, a lot of companies, especially major brands, are utilizing the ability to have a hangout with a certain amount of people and broadcasting and recording automatically to YouTube. So, for example, how this relates to maybe a radio station is, let's say your morning show, some of you might do live video feeds. Well, with Google Hangout, you could actually do a live video feed, and people can actually be in the room at the same time. You could broadcast it live on YouTube, which is a really nice feature. I know that the morning show at the Wynn in Springfield, Missouri, has been really utilizing Google+, and they host a Hangout for an hour in the morning show where people can engage with them via video chat. So it's just a really good way to engage your audience in a video way. And then most recently, a statistic came out a couple days ago that showed that user satisfaction among social media, Google Plus was ranked the highest. They had 82% user satisfaction, while Facebook dropped 8% down to 62%. So when you look at those numbers, and everybody has seen it, if you're familiar with social media at all and you follow some of the blogs and news, Facebook has been under the radar, not under the radar, but kind of on a tightrope for a while, ever since their stock release. And so they're figuring out new ways of engaging their audience. Unfortunately, the advertising has been failing, and a lot of the different features they've been coming out has been failing, while Google Plus has just been maximizing on Facebook's failed efforts. Facebook's not going anywhere. I think it's highly important. I'm not against Facebook, but you just want to take notice that Google Plus is not going anywhere either. So you just want to keep that in the back of your mind. Pinterest has become a big topic. I know on the New Media Forum we have talked about Pinterest 1,000 times. Radio stations were running towards this phenomenon because in just 2 short years they added over 12 million users, and 80% of them being women in your demographic. So I can understand why so many people were interested in Pinterest. However, a lot of copyright issues came up, and so we want to talk about that a little bit and then some do's and don'ts. The reason the copyright issues were coming up is because photographers, designers, illustrators were not getting credit for their images. Since that time, Pinterest has made a serious effort to try to fix this problem, but they're still fighting towards a solution. So here are some do's and don'ts. The do's: post original content from events, promotions, and designs, your own internal designs, whether you're working on a particular event. If you're posting pictures, feel free to take pictures at concerts and post those because that's your original content. Have contests that allows listeners that are out at your event to take pictures and post it to your Pinterest because that's original content, and they're giving you permission to use that content. If you do repin certain things on Pinterest, make sure you're only repinning the things that have been credited. A couple of months ago, in the efforts to fix the copyright issues, Pinterest has a little spot now that says give credit to this photo or image. And so if it's already been credited, technically then you're in the clear. So if you're going to repin something, make sure it's already been credited. And add a pinning button to your blog and your website. A lot of the stuff on your website and your blogs are original content. So feel free to add the little pinning button next to your Facebook and your Twitter button so people can pin those things, especially if you have images from events and things like that. So if you have a photo gallery on your website, make sure that there's some sort of pinning. So don't repin images that have not been credited. Don't find images on the internet and post that to your Pinterest boards, which should be somewhat common sense. And don't post images from a hired photographer, even if your station hired them without written consent. This is just a way to protect yourself because I have seen where companies have hired a photographer to come and they've utilized those images, and then later that photographer came back and said you didn't get written consent. So make sure you have some sort of written consent, even if you hired that photographer to come work for you at an event or something like that. And lastly, with Pinterest, think outside the box. Now, this is a really interesting way of if you're scared of Pinterest and the copyright issues. We talked about this about a month ago on the New Media Forum. Star 99.1 launched their own version of Pinterest called God Moments. If you go to star991fm.com/God Moments, it was something that they built where their listeners could actually go on and post their own God moment. And the page is designed like Pinterest, and people can share on Facebook and Twitter some of the God moments that people or their audience had. So it was a way for not only the radio station to engage with their listeners, but they were able to, the other listeners were able to engage with themselves if there was a really awesome God moment. So you definitely want to check that out. If you get my presentation, I have the link in there. but it's star991fm.com/godmoment. Other social media sites, including LinkedIn and YouTube, which we'll kind of finish off with. A lot of people ask me about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really a static social site. What that means is you're not going to have a lot of engagement. The only engagement that you have on LinkedIn normally is going to be through the groups, and I highly recommend it for your sales and your underwriting team to be engaged on LinkedIn because it's a great way to connect. But you should have a station or a business LinkedIn page, but it's all going to be informational. The more sites that link to your website, the better it is for SEO. So if somebody that works for your station has a LinkedIn account, make sure that they're linking as an employee to the business LinkedIn account. But other than that, it's not something that you have to monitor on a regular basis. In fact, it'll take you 10 to 15 minutes to actually set it up, and then you don't have to worry about it really after that, except for your sales and underwriting team. If you're looking at ways to increase that, make sure that they're engaging in local groups and things that are related to sales. There's a lot of education out there, and they want to utilize those tools. YouTube, I think, is very important for you. If you have a YouTube account, you're trying to figure out how to utilize it. What we talked about with Google Plus with the video Hangouts, that's a great way of utilizing YouTube. Doing videos with your funny videos within the station. I've seen a lot of stations do, series. They'll do like a 5-video series over a week span on a particular topic, and it's almost like mini episodes that are 3 to 5 minutes long, but it's helping your audience to engage. And the great thing about video content and utilizing YouTube is it's easy to push out to Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest now because they do video. You can push those things out, and it just creates more content, some more content for those social media sites. So that's the importance of YouTube. The other sites like Flickr, if you don't have a social media site, I wouldn't highly put a lot of time into like Flickr or Tumblr. But if you do have somebody that has the tools and they're monitoring social media on a regular basis, then yeah, have the presence of those places too. But if you're a small station and you're already having a hard time just engaging on Facebook, focus on Facebook and Twitter. I know that even with major large corporations that we work with and we're doing their social media for, we immediately talk to them about, they come to us and they say, well, we have 10 different accounts. And we start to talk to them about, well, let's just work on Facebook. Let's just work on Twitter, because you need to be great at those things. You don't want to just be okay at everything. You want to be great at a couple of social media platforms before you start to move on to everything else. My final thoughts just for you is to hire a social media manager. Some of you might already have somebody in place, but to actually hire someone that's monitoring every post that goes out. I wouldn't give access to your entire staff for Facebook or Twitter. Every post, even if somebody, like let's say someone on the morning show has a great post that they want to post to the Facebook page, have them filter it through the social media manager. The reason why that's important is the social media manager should be studying what audience is out there, what kind of things help engage them, and they just kind of understand them better. And so if the morning show either has an idea and they want to post it, well, either the social media manager will go ahead and post it for them, or they'll know how to word it in a better way that will engage the audience a little bit better. A social media manager can be part-time. If they have the right tools and training, it could be 20 hours a week. If not, then it could be a little bit less, but I wouldn't recommend going out and getting the first intern that's 19 that's been on social media for all his life or all her life. There's a difference in being a social media expert and just using social media. There's an extensive interview process with major companies when they're interviewing a consultant for social media, because there's so many people out there that can fake being knowledgeable on social media. So you just want to keep that in mind. It's a particular personality that makes a great social media manager. There's a couple of radio stations now that I'm working with and hiring a social media manager, and we've been talking about that personality that's going to fit that role really well. A lot of times, a lot of the qualities that a program director has is going to be the same qualities that a social media manager has, because the program director is monitoring the content on air. Social media manager is monitoring the content online. So if you look at the qualities that maybe a good program director has, maybe those are the same qualities you look for a social media manager. you want to utilize the tools that are out there, like monitoring tools, Sprout Social is one that I love to use. It's very cheap. It's under $10 a month. And Hootsuite Pro is also under $10 a month. They both give you a lot of analytical tools for you to determine what's working and what's not. So you definitely want to utilize those tools, either one or two of them. I use both just because of the line of work that I'm in. And then utilize the free tools. Like I was talking about Facebook Analytics. Be monitoring that regularly. And then Google Analytics has really stepped up their game of recent in regards to social media. And you can go into Google Analytics and actually see some of the new features. If you've been using Google Analytics for a while, this is just an FYI, and you haven't updated to the new Google Analytics, as of tomorrow, your Google Analytics will go down. Google is discontinuing the old analytics. So if you haven't already made the transfer to the new one, you're going to want to do that today, or at least tell your web team to do it today. And that's it for me. I do, and when you download the presentation, I have my email, my phone number. You can get me on Twitter and Facebook. And if you're interested in more social media news or technology news that's regarded to social media, I do a Monday through Thursday daily update. It's very short, just 5 articles. And what I do is I just take all the content that's out there and give you the most important news of the day. Lori and Michelle?
Hey, Chris. Hey. Oh my gosh, that was awesome. I took so many notes, and honestly, all I'm thinking right now is that I can't wait until I can actually go back and re-listen to this. So I hope that everybody feels that way, which all of our teleconferences are recorded and put up on our member section under benefits at cmbonline.org. A couple of things. I was writing down questions and just, trying to keep up with just everything. So much great information. Thank you. And you actually started answering some of my questions. Like I'd get a question, because in particular I was thinking a lot of stations, they don't have time. They can't hire a new employee for, say, like you were talking about, a social media manager, and so they're kind of working with what they've got. But obviously, this is such a huge realm, to dive into and to really utilize. And so you were saying if you had someone on staff, that realistically the time that would be necessary to spend would be like about 20 hours a week. Is that correct?
Yeah, like I said, you could probably do a little bit less, but it would require some of the tools and training to do so.
Right.
A lot of times, if you're having to monitor each social media site by going to Facebook, going to Twitter, it takes up a lot of time and to be able to hold those conversations. So, yeah, somebody on your staff could already have the traits and qualities that can make them a good social media manager, but I would recommend the stations hiring an outsider to come in and help them with those tools and training.
Right. So this is something, it's really, to add, it's somebody becoming a part of what they do on a daily, weekly basis, or if you're at the level where you could hire somebody, definitely a need for a hire if you, like moving forward for a bigger station or even a smaller station.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to say that if you have a webmaster or a developer that continues to do your web design and your web development, it's not in all cases, but 8 times out of 10, they are not going to have the traits that's going to make a good social media manager. And if there's developers on the call, I apologize. But a lot of times a developer or web developer is very different from somebody that manages social media.
Okay. Another question I had, just going back to promotions for all the promotions people that are listening in, is there kind of a simple, and it may not be a simple answer, but just if you have a single promotion that you're going to be rolling out on the air, and just how you implement that on Facebook and Twitter, is there a simple way to kind of explain how that differs, how you would roll that out on Facebook and how you would roll it out on Twitter?
There's not a simple answer. A lot of times, depending on how you do your promotions on air, it is going to be a little bit different. Like, for example, let's say you're doing a promotion. I used the example when I was talking. For example, there's a station that, and some of you already know where I'm from, but there's a station that's giving away ice cream on last Friday. They gave away ice cream every hour because it's a hot summer. And so my thoughts to that is if you're going to do an on-air promotion like that, well, utilize it throughout the week on social media. Update Twitter that's regards to ice cream, or maybe do some really funny 2 to 3 minute videos that you can post on YouTube and push that content out to Facebook and Twitter, or have like a mini ice cream party with the staff and video that, because the audience that you have, your listeners, want to figure out ways of engaging with you more, and they already feel like they have a personal relationship with the on-air personalities in a lot of cases. So the more visuals, photos, and videos that they can get from that throughout the week, that's going to help them engage when Friday comes along and you're doing the on-air promotion. They're already going to be super excited about ice cream.
Right. So just kind of utilizing all of it in the ways that you can. Just looking at on hashtag CMB Social, Jeremy Tracy he said he just went from on-air program director to digital program director. So he's shifting his title. One other question I wanted to see, just to let everybody know, how do they sign up for the PD forum for your PD forum part?
They can actually go to programdirector.net, and then you click on the forums, and when you scroll down, you'll see all the different forums, whether it's the programming forum, it's called the new media forum. They have an underwriting forum. There's tons of that. So you just click on the new media forum, and then and once they're approved, they'll be able to enjoy the education and conversations that's on there. It's really cool because I've talked to a lot of the other moderators that do the other forums, and the new media forum is one of the more engaging forums. People really get involved in some of the conversations that happen there, whether it's on social media or web design or web development. At times it gets a little technical. I've seen code, and at times it's just things like the Pinterest copyright stuff. So it's definitely a great forum if you're wanting to learn more about social media.
Okay, cool. So programdirector.net, and then go to New Media Forum, and that's where everybody
click in Forums, and then click the New Media Forum to join.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, that's all I've got. Michelle, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you guys so much. Chris, this was amazing, and so much food for thought, and it hurts my brain. I'm not going to lie to you. So. So the follow-up, Lori, everyone's getting his presentation. Is that right?
We do have it, and so I'm trying to figure out the best way to kind of get that out. Right now, we won't be able to get it up online until early next week, just as far as for the recording. So just a heads up on that. But yeah, it will be made available just as soon as possible. So if you want, you can email me and I can do it directly. But right now, I've got a link for that. So just yeah, we'll be getting it out.
Great. And next week is also when we'll have the audio up on this from this teleconference. So we'll have the next one next month. It's always the third Wednesday at noon Eastern time. So we're glad everyone's able to join us, and we look forward to having this again next month and offering something strong at that point for you to better your jobs and your positions and your as you serve those that are around you. So anyway, Chris, big thank you to you. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.